Anybody got a wild guess what it is? No? Little as much when God is in it. Ever heard of Little as Much Ministries of Maine? Never heard of it, no. I don't know. We don't have a very lively bunch here tonight. They look like they've been all sliding today. Well, if you can stand, why don't we sing all three stanzas? Little is much when God is in it. That is for sure.
661.
God is in it. Somebody lead us in prayer, please.
Heavenly Father, we praise and thank you, God, for this glorious day that you've blessed us with. Thank you, Lord, for the great message this morning from your word. God, thank you for our church family, our pastor. I just praise you for your spirit. God, thank you that Jen was able to go and learn a lot and get back all safely to her family. Lord, I just pray that you bless this time together now. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. And I want to give Jen as much time as she would like tonight. I know that it's hard for her to talk much about Ethiopia. So I thought, if we have a half an hour after she's done, we'll do testimonies then. But I do want to give her time, a full couple of weeks, so a lot to talk about. So glad you made it back tonight. We had some casualties this afternoon. That's why several are not with us, because of the sliding party. They got pooped out, I guess. So, but let's give an ear to what is happening, and Lord willing will be happening in Ethiopia in the days ahead. So, Jen, the Lord bless you as you come and share with us.
Well, I'd like to start by thanking Bradford Baptist Church for allowing me to share about my trip. It was put on the Facebook page yesterday that I would be sharing today, and I shared that on my Facebook page. You know, if anybody wants to come and hear about my trip, come on over. And a friend of mine who does a very similar thing to what I'm doing, she takes groups to Ethiopia on mission trips. She commented on it, and she said, "That's really great that your church lets you do that." And then she sent me a private message, and she said in all her trips to Ethiopia, she has asked if she could share at her church, and her church has told her no, they do not want her sharing about her trips. And I was like, really? I can't even imagine that. Because I know how supportive you guys are, and I appreciate the prayers and the interest that you have in our ministry. So I just wanted to start out by thanking you very much for that. So I'm going to do two parts to my presentation tonight. I'm going to do first what I did for 2 weeks, and then plans for the future, what we're going to do in the trips ahead and the weeks ahead and the months ahead. So I left here on Tuesday the 10th of February. I flew down to Washington, D.C. I had a very smooth flight down, got down there about 7:30 in the morning, and I had the whole day and the whole night, and I flew out the next morning at 10 o'clock. So I had pretty much a whole day to kill in D.C., and I decided that I would go to the zoo. I'd never been to the National Zoo. It sounded like a good thing to do, so I went to the zoo, and it was awesome, but really cold. So I spent most of the morning at the zoo, part of the afternoon. That was a lot of fun. It was nice to have a relaxing kind of, bring it all in focus day before I got on the plane and headed over to Ethiopia. So that was really great. Went to from DC to Dubai. Very pleasant flight, long but pleasant. Quick transfer in Dubai, got to Ethiopia. My friends met me at the airport. Everything went smoothly except I didn't have my bags when I got there. Okay, so let's see here. So this is coming into Addis. This is on the outskirts of the city where we fly into. Really on the outskirts, since the city is built considerably more built up than this now. So got there on Thursday. Friday we went to Holetta, and here's sort of where so I stayed in Addis, and then Holetta is the area where one of the orphanages that we're going to be working with and one of the schools that we're going to be working with are both in Holetta. This is a nice little drive through the country. It doesn't take very long. That's like maybe a half-hour drive. So we went out there. We went to the Holetta school. I think most of you were here when Craig shared that he was applying for a grant to build a latrine at the school. Unfortunately, he did not get the grant. It was awarded to another group to build a water cistern in South America somewhere for an entire village, so good project. And actually, once I got to Ethiopia, saw the location for the latrines, talked to the engineer and what have you, turns out he would not have been able to complete the project in the amount of time he had. So God actually worked that out for the good of everybody, that it didn't work out quite the way we thought it should. But the money is possibly already available from another source to build those latrines. And Craig did all of the prep work with the proposals and the plans and talking to the engineer and all that. He did all that ahead of time, so that is a huge blessing. So anyway, so I went to the school, and they have the church that we partner with over there has a kindergarten class at the school that has 90 kids. They divide them into 3 classes. This is their school building. This is the part that's painted white is their school building, and that's the entrance for one of their classrooms. These are their school tables. They have every 7 kids gets 1 table and 1 chair per child. So one of the projects that we may do in the future is to add more seating and more tables for the kids to work at there. Oh, that's the next day. Sorry, I was like, thought I had a different picture in there. Okay, after we went to the school, we went to the orphanage, which is, this is the orphanage that I visited a year and a half ago when I was there. And in the end of the orphanage, Like there's the part of the orphanage where the kids live, and then you go through a gate, and there's the building continues on. And on the other side of the gate, they have a room set up where widows can come. They have, I think, 5 or 6 that come, and they weave scarves to make a living. And so this is one of the scarves that they were working on. Beautiful scarves. At the orphanage, there was a new little baby. He was so tiny. He was 45 minutes old when he came to the orphanage. He was found on the cobblestone streets in the city with his birth mother. They were both on the street, and whoever found him, they don't even know who found him, but whoever found him knew enough to take him to the clinic. So they took him to the clinic. The clinic said, nothing we can do with him, take him to the orphanage. So they scooped him up and took him to the orphanage, and he was still all goopy and gross and what have you. So the nanny at the orphanage, who is amazing, Samine is amazing. Anyway, she just swooped right in and said, no problem, I got this, and cleaned him all up, and he was 2 days old when I got there and doing great. Would make eye contact with you and was obviously content and stuff, so he was doing pretty well. His name is Samuel. This is the little girl in the pink is one of the girls that lives at the orphanage, and the little girl in white is one of the nanny's daughter, and she just comes with her during the day. But I just love their little faces. They're so adorable. So then that was Friday. Saturday, I went back out to Heletta. It's like going from here to Bangor, so we went back and forth. The church that we partner with has a child sponsorship program, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and the kids at this school that are sponsored go to the school on Saturday morning for what's called Saturday Morning Club. They go, they play some games, they have some social time, and they get tutoring. So this is Frazier. Frazier is a university professor in Addis, and he volunteers his time to come out to Heletta on Saturday mornings and tutor the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade kids in math, English. I think math and English are the big ones. I feel like there was something else that he was tutoring in. But anyway, he is great. He interacts really well with the kids. He's very smart. So he's a huge asset to the tutoring program. And these are this is the kindergarten through 5th grade kids. The lady there on the right-hand side, that's Hannah. She's the other volunteer that comes and tutors the kids. She tutors the younger class. She's also the social worker that Covenant Development Association, one of the 2 social workers that works for them. Covenant is our partner in Ethiopia. So we went there, and that Saturday was Valentine's Day. So I took my 2 best friends in Ethiopia out for dinner on Valentine's Day. This is Pochi, who you know, and my driver Dave. Dave is awesome. You guys would absolutely love Dave. Then Sunday morning, we stayed in Addis, or Sunday, we stayed in Addis. We went to Covenant Church on Sunday morning. And this is the inside of the church. They are actually building a new church, which is, I think they said it's built up to like they don't have the roof on yet, but the walls are going up. And you want to talk about faith? Holy smokes! They do not have a penny, but they are moving ahead with that church building. And every time they come to a point where they're like, well, we're going to have to stop work because we don't have enough money to continue, the money comes in for the next thing. I met with the engineer on to talk about one of our projects, and I asked him how the church building was coming because he's in charge of the building of the church. And he said, well, I'll tell you, today I was working and I was thinking, I think this is the last day that I'll be able to work on it because we don't have any more money. We're out of supplies. I'm going to have to go buy more supplies and stuff. So he said, until the money comes in, I'm going to have to stop. So he said, I was getting ready to tell all of my guys that today's the last day. And he said, one of our parishioners stopped by and said, so how's it going? He said, well, I told him, and he said, so what's the next thing? And he said, and I told him the next thing. And he said, well, how much money do you need? And I told him how much money I needed, and he said, okay, and wrote me a check. And it was for something like 145,000 birr, which is, help me out, Ken, about $8,000, which in Ethiopia is substantial. And that was just the next thing. And he said, so next week we have work, which we didn't think we were going to have, and now we can continue working. So it's just amazing to see that. I did not get the opportunity to visit the church site. We were going to go on the following Sunday, and it didn't work out. So next time I go, I will get to see that. So then Monday morning, we headed out of Addis, and I left this little 4 hours and 14 minutes up there because that just cracked me up. It took us 9.5 hours. That is really a bad estimate. So we headed out of Addis in the morning, and we went for, we went for coffee. I have to tell you, I hate coffee. I hate coffee. I love the smell of coffee. I like when we have company over and they want coffee because then I can make the coffee and my kitchen smells like the coffee, but I don't have to drink the coffee because that stuff is nasty. So we stopped for breakfast and coffee, and as usual, my friends Pochi and Dave and Tess were teasing me about the fact that I am in the land of coffee, where coffee came from, that is the best coffee in the world, and I'm turning my nose up at it. And they joked about it, and then they didn't even ask me. They ordered water for me because they knew I wasn't going to drink the coffee. So we're sitting there, and we're joking about it. And I told my friend Pochi that if coffee tasted like coffee smelled, I would like coffee, but it never tastes as good as it smells. And she goes, well, mine does. Like, yeah, right. So I picked up her almost empty cup, and I tossed it back, and guess what I love now? I've had 2 today, and I'm all set for talking for the rest of the evening because I've had caffeine. I absolutely love coffee now, which is weird. Yes, who said that? Albert, yes. Okay, so we headed down, after breakfast, we headed down to the southern part of the country to Hosanna, which, hold on a second, I'm going to go back one. Screen here. So Hosanna is there. Hosanna is the town that Ellie was born in. And that was, I didn't know we were going there. We started heading out of Addis, and I'm like, hey, I recognize some of the scenery. And they said, yeah, well, we have to go to Hosanna for business on our way to Shoney. So we're gonna go through Hosanna instead of, we normally would take this other route, I guess. So that was kind of a surprise, and that was cool. I was able to get some pictures of Hosanna that I can share with Ellie when she gets older and stuff, so that was neat. We went to Hosanna. They had business there, so that took us a little while. And then we headed over to Shoney, which is where Covenant has this orphanage. And you may remember this orphanage from when I went a year and a half ago. This is a beautiful building. The government has told them that it is the nicest orphanage in the region, and it really is well built and well cared for and well run. So I love going here. In the back there, you see there's 2 doors. Those are the guest quarters at the orphanage. So I had my own room, which was really kind of unexpected but appreciated. The only problem is there's no running water at the orphanage, so everything was bucket baths and stuff like that, but that's no problem. So these are some of the little guys that live at the orphanage right now. They are adorable. Caleb there on the top right, there's a little boy at the orphanage who is about 2.5 years old, and he and I were playing peekaboo through the window, and I would just kind of go up and go boo, and then go back down, and he was thinking that was the most hilarious thing, and I went boo at one point, and Caleb saw me and freaked out. I have never seen a child freak out quite so badly over me. So I felt horrible, and that look that he's given me there where I'm taking the picture, that's the look I got the entire time I was there. He never warmed up to me, never wanted me around him. I felt bad, but what do you do? So that's Monday, and then Tuesday morning, we rode out of Shawnee, and this one is actually fairly accurate. We went about 3 minutes down the road, and then you see the little dashed line there at the bottom. That's where we walked rather than drove because there was no road. Beautiful, beautiful area of the country. It was so much fun to walk through. We walked through an agricultural area. They were growing chickpeas and cabbage and tomatoes and potatoes and onions and all sorts of stuff. And so we were able to walk through the agricultural area. Oh, and sugar cane. And then we walked up a fairly steep hill. And at the top of the hill, this is how we got those 3 minutes down the road. This is a Bajaj. I want one. So at the top of the hill, we got to the top of the hill, and there's this house here, and this is the house that the pastor of the newly planted church in Walida, Ethiopia, this is where he lives. And before we left the area, he invited us in to his home so that I could pray for him and his congregation, which was a huge, humbling honor to be allowed to go and pray for him. But it was a little surreal because I'm in his house, and it's a dirt floor, and he has a wooden pallet that he sleeps on, and that was his home. And I just can't comprehend that. In our society, I just can't wrap my head around that. But he was so excited that we were there. And this is him. This is on the left here. In the red shirt and the green pants. This is the pastor of the church, and this picture is actually taken inside their church. They took us over to see it. The two gentlemen on the other side there, they are the men that owned the land that the church is on, and they sold it to the church to build the church. So they were very excited to show us this wonderful land that they were able to sell for the church building. And this gentleman, whose name I can never quite get right. I'll learn it before May, I swear. But he was a Muslim man, and he converted to Christianity and is now the pastor of a church. And it's just an amazing, amazing story. He's an amazing man. So we went there, and then we went back to the orphanage after we'd seen that area. And this gentleman that's sitting on the floor here, technically, he's the guard of the gate at the orphanage, but he's actually one of the nannies. They had to hire another guard because he wasn't being the guard. He was spending all his time being a nanny. And he's so good at being a nanny that they did not want to send him back out to be a guard. So he is one of the nannies now, and the kids adore him.
And he's 8 feet tall.
I have a picture of us together. He's rather tall, and there's not much to him. He is one thin man. But he walks into the room, and all the kids' faces light up. And he sits down on the floor, and it doesn't matter where they are in the room, they start trying to get to him. Some of them have learned to crawl simply so that they can get from wherever they are to him. It's amazing to see. I told our driver that it was really wonderful to see the kids there who do not have any parents at all, seeing an example of what a good father should be. Even if they're only there for a little while, they have that example that they will hold on to forever. He's just great. So he's kind of tall. These are the nannies at the orphanage. The gentleman in the orange shirt is the current guard, and he spends most of his time in the nursery, so they're thinking of hiring another guard. So I say guard, it's not like he has to stand there, at his post all the time. So it's not like there's any danger or anything. But anyway, the 2 guards and the 3 nannies pretty much work full time with the kids. There are 10, I think. I think there's 10 kids at the orphanage right now. So these are a couple of the other ones. This little cutie down here with the yellow shirt and the cute little expression there, he was one of the babies that was at the orphanage when I went November of a year and a half ago. So that was really cool to see him growing and being so happy. And he wanted me to play with him the whole time I was there. They do this thing for potty training in Ethiopia. What they do is at certain points during the day and at certain times, they put the kid on the toilet, on the little training potty, and that kid is not allowed to get up until they go. You will sit there. If you have to sit there for 2 hours, you're going to sit there for 2 hours until you go. And it works. The kids are potty trained by the time they're like 2 years old, so it works. But he was on the potty, and he wanted to be with me. So he's like scooting the potty over, potty and all, and he's coming over. He was a riot. And then Biniam here at the top, I'm going to talk about Biniam a little bit later on, but he is the only older child at the orphanage. Their orphanage is only approved for toddlers, but the government placed him at their orphanage. So he's kind of a loner. He doesn't have a lot going on right now. There's one of the other cutie pies with Pochi. And then on Wednesday, we left Shoney and we went to Awassa, down here at the bottom. Awassa is where Caleb and Lincoln were born. And we went down there, and they had some business that they needed to take care of, and then we went out to lunch in Awassa. You can see it's kind of on a lake there. That's Lake Awassa. And there's a beautiful resort there where you can go and have lunch. So we went and had lunch on the lake. That was really nice. And then in the afternoon, we drove up to Zouai. Zouai is also on a lake. See the green lake there. Lake Zouai is the third largest lake in Ethiopia. This is where we stayed. This is the best place I've ever stayed in Ethiopia. This was really nice. And the next day we went and took a boat ride out on the lake, and we went and saw birds and hippos and more birds. I was most excited about the hippos. We didn't get very close. They don't like the idea of tourists going over the edge of the boat and all that. So we didn't get very close to the hippos, but it was still really cool to see them in person. So then that day, after we went on the hippo ride, then we drove back up to Addis. And again, that whole 1 hour and 58 minutes thing's a lie. I think it took us 6.5 hours. So, we made some stops. We had to stop and buy tomatoes and onions and fish. We bought fish. Okay. People in Ethiopia do not typically eat much fish. There is some fish that they'll eat, and they eat it at certain times of the year, but it's not like they are looking for fish. So we stopped to buy tomatoes and onions, and this gentleman, young gentleman, I would say probably maybe 15 or 16 years old, was selling fish. It's like 90 degrees in the sun and full-on sun, not a cloud in the sky, and he's selling fish. And I'm like, no, thank you. I'm good. Well, he must have asked Pochi about 10 times if she wanted to buy fish, and she finally felt so sorry for him that he wasn't selling any fish, because who buys fish when it's 90 degrees and the fish has been in the sun? So she bought some fish from him. I'm like, oh my word. Okay, so we're in a van, enclosed space, and he brings the fish over, and he puts it in a plastic bag, and he ties the plastic bag up. And I'm like, okay, we're on the right track here. Then he puts that plastic bag inside another plastic bag, and he ties it up, and I'm like, okay, we're all set. We can chuck it when we get to a trash can somewhere, and no harm, no foul. And he goes to hand it to Pochi, and he pokes his finger right through both bags and hands her the fish. So the entire ride back to Addis, the van smelled like fish and onions. But anyway, so it took us a while to get back, but it was still a nice drive. I love driving through the countryside in Ethiopia because there's always something to see. There's always something going on. We stopped, when they sell vegetables and fruit and stuff in Ethiopia, it's somebody standing on the side of the road and they're waving their arms at you, stop and buy mine. We stopped and bought papayas. I've never seen a papaya this big. What do we buy here in the grocery store like this big? Papayas that are about that big for 25 cents a piece. Like, I don't even like papaya, and I want to buy a papaya to say I bought one for 25 cents. So we bought some stuff along the way. We stopped and we bought strawberries. they were kind of mediocre strawberries. But to say we bought strawberries in Ethiopia, we stopped for coffee, we went out to eat. So it took us a while to get home. So that's Thursday. Friday, we went back out to Heletta. This is at the orphanage in Heletta, and this is Natty. Natty always has that look on his face. That kid is the happiest kid I have ever seen in my life. He is just always grins and giggles. There is a woman in Ethiopia, an Ethiopian, who would like to adopt Natty, and if you all think of Natty this week, if you could pray that things work out so that she could adopt him, that would be awesome. There's some things in her way right now that are going to make it difficult, but God is great and God can take care of it. So, and when his mom walks in the room, Natty knows it, and everybody in the room knows it. So nobody's thinking somebody else is going to adopt Natty. Everybody knows that this person is going to adopt Natty. So then we went out for coffee again, because now I love coffee. And I just want to point out that this is Pochi's cup, and this is my cup. They gave me the hardest time because I went from hating it to loving it. So that was Friday. Saturday, I was invited to join Pochi and her sister-in-law. In Ethiopia, when someone passes away, they have a tradition of 1 year later to the day. They have a celebration, kind of like a memorial service, but it's mostly just an excuse to get together and eat a lot of food. So Pochi's brother-in-law's mother had passed away last year, and so this was the day of the celebration. So I was invited to join them, which was an honor to be included in that. And so this 45-minute drive took us 3.5 hours, and we went to, they don't pronounce this anywhere close to what's written here. I know this is the right place, but they called it Debre, so I don't know where they get that. But anyway, went to Debre, and after the feast, we stopped at this hotel where the balcony is right on the lake. And I don't know what kind of lakes these are. I'd like to talk to a geologist and find out, but there's all these lakes around Debre that are almost perfect circles with mountains completely surrounding them. They almost look like craters. So I thought it was really cool. They didn't know anything about them. So then Sunday was church, and went out to lunch with the pastor and his wife to a nice little restaurant called the Amsterdam, which serves Italian and American style food. And then as soon as I was done with that, we went and got Pochi and switched vehicles and went back to the Amsterdam to meet friends for dinner. So I got a lot of the same food that day. That was a lot of fun. I got to 10 years ago, when we adopted Caleb and Lincoln, we started supporting a child through Compassion International who was 14 years old at the time. So he's now 24. He's graduated from college, and I got to have dinner with him, which was awesome. He's a sweetheart. And then I have some other friends that I only get to see when I'm there, so I made sure I got to see them as well. We all went to dinner. And then Monday, we ran errands all morning, and I told Pochi I needed to be at the airport at 2:15, and that my ticket said do not pass through security any later than 2:45. And she said, okay, no problem. So at 2:44, we pulled into the airport parking lot. But it was fine. Everything's to the last minute there. This is north of Addis. This picture was taken from the plane, but this is a gorge up north of the capital, which we actually visited 5 years ago when we were there. It really kind of looks like the Grand Canyon when you're there. It was pretty cool, so I wanted to share that. So that was pretty much what I did while I was there. God really, he blessed every part of the trip. He made himself known every part of the trip. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that you guys were praying for me while I was gone, and I appreciate that so much. I can't even put into words how much I appreciate that. There were times where I got frustrated, and God would show me exactly what I needed to do, and there were times that what are you doing? No, don't, sorry. Don't play yet. Okay. Lost my train of thought there. One day in particular, I knew that our ministry was going to be doing projects in Ethiopia. We were going to have physical things that we were going to put money into, take teams to work on, and complete. Much like Maine Haitian Mission does with the church building that they were building down there. They have a specific building that they are working on, and their team goes and works on that building. And I knew that we were going to have something like that. But there is such a huge need in Ethiopia in every area that every time that I talked to Pochi about what projects we were going to be working on, she would tell me what they need money for. And I could not get her to understand what I meant by projects, no matter how I reworded it. And she could not get me to understand that what they needed was money. And I was getting very frustrated. And I talked to Ken on Facebook. We must have talked for 2 hours. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I went to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night because I was still suffering from jet lag and what have you. And it was almost as if I could hear God saying, you don't need to do anything. It's not you. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to come up with the answers. You just need to let me show you what you're going to do. And I went, okay. And from then on, the trip was, I found the projects we were going to do. I knew what we were going to work on. I knew where the money was going to have to go. Pochi understood what I meant. I was like, wow, I am so glad that I just gave that to God. Just let him have that frustration and that worry. So, speaking of that, we have projects that we're going to work on. And apparently, I set this to automatically go through. So we're going to go through really fast. Unless I can, maybe I can change these really quick. Sorry, I thought I had these on one click. Of course, you're getting to see all these. How fast can you guys read? So obviously not all of these are going to be projects that we will complete in a quick amount of time, but these are things that we want to work towards over the next couple of months and couple of years and what have you. So, okay, let's start here. Okay, so one of the first projects that we are going to work on, I should preface this by saying our first team trip is going to be May 20th through June 2nd, so 11 weeks from Tuesday. Really fast, but if you want to go or if you know somebody who wants to go, please talk to me. We have a couple of open spaces on the team that I would love to fill with people that I know, but I don't know. I'm leaving that up to God. God knows who's going to be on my team. I do have 2 people who have committed to going and 2 people who are thinking about going. So I know for sure we're going to have 3. I'd really like to have 6 of us total to go. One of the first projects that we are going to work on is Pastor Kabede's house. Pastor Kabede is the pastor of the church in Shoni, Ethiopia, which shares a wall with the orphanage. You can walk directly from the orphanage to the church through a gate. And he and his wife and 5 kids were living in one room. And their rent was about, what did we figure out, Ken? $5.50 a month? I think about $5.50 a month, and he could not make rent. That was too much. He gets paid $50 a month, and giving 10% of that for rent was too much. So he was behind on rent, and they were threatening to evict him and his family. So the church in Addis that I went to, Covenant, they had a fundraiser, and they came up with $650 for him to buy his own home. Now, this is huge in Ethiopia. You don't own your own home in Ethiopia. You build something or you live somewhere, and when whoever owns the land wants to put something there, they just bulldoze your house and put something there, and you move on to the next thing. So you don't own your own home. So for him to own his own home, he was so proud of that house when he showed it to us. This is his home. It's 2 rooms. It's mud walls and mud floor. It has nothing in it at this point. So We went and visited, we walked around, and then he went to show somebody something else, and I asked Pochi, like, what do you see that needs to be done here? And she just started naming stuff off that's got to be done before you can move in. She said 2 rooms is not enough space for 7 people, and I agree. That's an awfully small space for 7 people. So the first thing she wants to do is to put an addition on the house of 1 more room, so they can have 2 bedrooms and like a combo dining area, sitting area. Especially with him being the pastor of a church, being able to have parishioners into his home would be a big deal. So that's one thing. Another thing she would like to see happen is to have them put a skim of concrete on the outside of the mud, because that will make the house last for as long as he's living there. If it's just left as mud, it will deteriorate very quickly. It needs actual windows and doors. Right now it has holes for windows, and the door is just a couple of boards nailed together. The interior should be painted. Would be nice to have some simple furnishings in there for them. They have mattresses, but that's all they'll be bringing with them. And we'd like to stock it with at least a few months worth of food supplies so that they don't have to worry for a little while about buying food. So this whole thing, grand total of $1,150 to do all of that to this house. So this is going to be our first project. I've already paid $200 of that, which will be the addition. So that will be done this month. And then we'll be working on paying for the rest of that as money comes in. Another project that we will be working on when we go in May is helping to put the concrete footing and the wattle and daub, which I'm really looking forward to putting on. Learning how to put the mud on the house will be so cool. Anyway, they're going to teach me how to do that. This is the church in Wallida that we saw the pastor there. To do everything for this, it's a much bigger building than the pastor's house. So this one's going to be a $1,500 project, but we're pretty sure we'll be able to complete this one, or at least pay for this one with money that comes in for the May trip. As I said, Craig did that proposal for the latrines at the Holetta School, and that proposal came in at about $10,000, and that's a pretty accurate amount of what it's going to take to put those latrines in. This is the current latrine that 100 4- and 5-year-olds use. I left out the picture of the interior because, trust me, you don't want to see it. It was really bad. I didn't even want to go in to take the picture. It's horrible. So Craig did not get that grant, but that's okay. We think we have a lead on money to pay for that, so we're hoping that this will be completed at some point over the course of the summer. In addition to the latrines, we would eventually like to add water for the kids to wash their hands after they use the bathrooms. And we'd like that water to be filtered so we know that they're getting clean water to wash their hands with. We'd like to add some additional desks. There's some holes in the floor we'd like to repaint, but these are all minor things that we'll do at some point. The latrines are the big one. We have a group possibly going in July. I will not be traveling with that group. If that group works out and they will be going in July, they are probably going to work on some renovations at the orphanage. The Samine, who I mentioned, the awesome, wonderful nanny at the orphanage, is actually adopting one of the children that lives at the orphanage. And she said, if I don't have my own space, he will never know that he's mine. He will just think he's one of the kids at the orphanage. So she told them that she needs her own space. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to repartition a couple of the rooms there and make her a little apartment. A couple of bedrooms, a little sitting room, and we're going to furnish that. So the group that goes in July will probably be working on that. I have suggested to Craig that he reapply for the grant that he applied for this year, but next year that he apply to build a whole school. He told me when he first heard about the grant that he wanted to build a school in Africa. He said, I've always wanted to build a school in Africa. And I said, there's no way you can build a school in Africa for $10,000. I said, it just can't happen. Well, guess what? You can build a school in Africa for about $1,000. So he figures that if he can get that grant, he'll be able to build the school, finish it, furnish it, fill it with supplies, and find a teacher for it. So Our hope is that near the church in Waleida, we'll also eventually, somewhere down the road, be able to build a school. Even if he doesn't get the grant, I still see that as something we would like to do. This is Biniam. I told you about him a little bit. Biniam was brought to the orphanage because his mother is in jail, and the orphanage was told that they just needed a place for him to stay for like 8 months until she gets out of jail. Okay, no problem. Not ideal because he can't go to school while he's there, and they're not really approved for older kids, but sure, we'll take him. Well, on our way to Shoney, we stopped in Hosanna for business. Well, part of the business was checking on, like, how much longer is she going to be in jail, because we're starting to feel like maybe he's been here long enough, and he's getting bored, and bored 10-year-old boys get into mischief, and we need to find something else, for him. And they said, what are you talking about, 8 months? She's going to be there for 9 years. And so Pochi's like, what do I do? So we talked about it the whole way from Hosanna to Shoney. And part of the story came out that originally his birth mother had told a family in Awassa that he was their son, or grandson. And she had all sorts of details about who his father was and how she'd known him and all this stuff. And she was using that to extort money from them. And when she was arrested, she said all the stuff that she told them was a lie. He isn't really your grandson. I just made it up. And I asked Pochi, I said, how did she have all those details to target this one specific family if it wasn't true? And Pochi said, well, I have no idea. She knew a lot about the family. And I said, well, is there any way to find out which time she was telling the truth? Was she telling the truth when she was telling them that he's their grandson, or when she said he wasn't? And she said, well, we could do DNA testing to find out. So we checked into DNA testing. It'll cost about $500 plus travel and stuff for him to be tested to see if he is their grandson. If it turns out that he is their grandson, he could go live with them. He would not have to live at the orphanage. He's going to be 19 when his mom gets out of jail. He's going to be an adult. This isn't like just for a little while. So I told Pochi that I would ask, whenever I talk to groups, I will ask if there's someone who would be interested in covering the cost of the DNA testing. If it turns out that he is not their grandson, Pochi will petition the government to allow him to move to the Holeta orphanage where the kids are his age and he would be able to go to school. So either way, there's an outcome that would be good for him, but we can't figure out which one to do until he can have the DNA testing done. So I'm just going to throw that out there. And then some things that we're going to constantly be looking for, I think. We need child sponsors. There are 25 kids in Waleida. None of them are sponsored at this point. They do not go to school. They do not have adequate clothing. As you can see, the little guy here, or the little girl with her ripped pants and what have you. They do not have enough food. And Pochi would very much like to get them sponsored. So if you would like to sponsor a specific child, and you would be able to write letters to them, and you would get updated pictures and stuff like that. Especially after I go, I would be able to bring pictures home and stuff. So if you would like to sponsor a child, please see me. I can get you hooked up tomorrow with that. Some others, this one isn't a sponsorship. At the kindergarten in Holeta, there are 100 kids that come to the kindergarten. They get done at 11:30 in the morning and they leave the school. They are 3, 4, and 5 years old, and most of them, their parents are day laborers. Their parents are not home until the sun goes down. So they are 3, 4, and 5-year-olds on their own, on the streets or at home or whatever. I can't imagine leaving Ellie alone in my house while I go outside to do something, let alone I'll be back in 5 or 6 hours. I just can't imagine it. But these kids are on their own. So the church would like to find people who would be willing to cover lunch at the school, which would allow them to keep the kids until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because they could feed them lunch and then continue education type stuff. It's more like a preschool kind of environment, but they'd be able to do stuff in the afternoon. If they can't feed them lunch, they can't keep them at the school. So we tried to figure it out while I was there. We had a lot of numbers floating around. We kind of came to a number of $650 a month to feed 100 kids. They would get, the protein they would get for the week would be 1 egg, and they would get either pasta or rice and some kind of vegetable every day. So it's not a lot of food, but it's more than they're getting at home, and it would allow them to stay at the school. So please be in prayer that that $650 a month comes in. And then we have some other sponsorship that we're looking for. There are a lot of volunteers that work for Covenant Development Association that we fear will decide that they need to stop volunteering and find employment where they would earn a salary. So if we can help them cover their basic needs, they would be able to continue helping with Covenant Development. This is our driver, Dave. Dave is absolutely awesome and amazing. And that humble little smile that he has there is the one he has on his face all the time. And there's about 10 volunteers that work for Covenant. He's one. There's also 2 social workers. There's Pochi. There's Samine, who's the nanny. There's some nannies and guards at the other orphanage. There's a bunch of volunteers. So we're looking for some sponsors for them. And we're looking for sponsors for the pastors of some of the new churches that are planted. The pastor at Walida currently does not get paid for his position, and he does not have a job outside of being a pastor, so it is all volunteer. And as far as I could tell when I was there, he eats corn. Was the only food he had in his house. So he would benefit greatly from having a monthly supporter. So that's pretty much what we're looking at long term. We have many more projects that will be added to the list. As we complete one, we'll add one on. We have building projects and renovation projects and what have you. So we're pretty much set for projects for about 3 years of trips to Ethiopia, which makes me really excited because I can't wait to go back. I'm really glad that the next trip is 11 weeks from Tuesday because I already miss Ethiopia. Ken's not as thrilled that the next trip is 11 weeks from Tuesday. Anyway, so does anyone have any questions about my trip or the projects? Or anyone want to jump up and say, I'll go with you in May? No? Darn it. Yes, Lydia, I know you would go with me in a heartbeat. Yes.
Can I say a few words about the people?
Sure.
I had a question too.
Yep.
You spoke about building a school, I forget which town it was.
Walida, yep.
Is there a school there now?
No.
Or no school
There is
whatsoever?
no school. The kids that are sponsored in Walida, once they have sponsors, will be sent to the school in Shoney, which was a 3-minute ride in the Bajaj, plus a 30-minute walk in. So they're now going to have to walk that whole thing every day to get to school. So we would like to have a school where they don't have to go so far. Yes, Tiffany.
The only way they get an education is if they're sponsored?
These particular kids, yes. In Ethiopia, you are required to have a school uniform in order to go to school. And these kids cannot afford, their families cannot afford school uniforms. So part of what Covenant Development does is supply a school uniform and school supplies so that those kids then may go to school. School is free. They don't have to pay a tuition, but they cannot go if they do not have a uniform.
And did I not see SAD number 1 on the letter sign? Okay.
I have no clue.
Thought that was kind of out there.
Yep. They have SADs there too, I guess.
SAD spells sad. And that school has no electricity, has dirt floors, and almost no windows. If you look at the pictures that she showed of that school, there's this little ventilator up at the top, and that's it. And when you go in those classrooms, your eyes will adjust. You'll be able to see. But the teacher in the first classroom in the kindergarten has a blackboard that's about that square and has a bookcase that's about that long and about that high. And that's all she had for all her supplies and for her teaching aids. She was using one of those kindergarten tables and a kindergarten kindergarten chair for her desk. Some of the people and I went to Addis and bought desks for those 3 teachers, and what I call cheap restaurant chairs, padded metal seating chairs. So they have now adult-sized desks and chairs in that school. But the kindergarten kids don't need uniforms, but they come dressed in tatters and rags, unfed, to kindergarten. They don't get a breakfast at home. And Pochi and the church have figured out a way to give them a bread roll and a cup of tea at 9:30 or so in the morning that allows them to get through till lunchtime. Because they couldn't even pay attention. They were so hungry and I gotta tell you, you know that guy with the smile and the big hat? That's everybody's friend.
Dave.
By the way, Dave.
Every sentence starts with, by the way.
Anyway, Dave is a volunteer. He is a master mechanic. He can fix a car with spit and wire and bubble gum. And he's kept Pochi's car on the road. It's a 1980, 82 or 3 Toyota Corolla. And it always needs something. So while I was there, I said, Dave, tell me how much it would cost to fix Pochi, bring everything up to date on Pochi's car. Because they drive it 9 hours to Shawnee, they drive it to Helena every week. And I said, how much? And he did some calculations and got back to me. And I happened to have that much money and I handed it to him. I said, don't say anything, just fix the car. I want everything brought up to date. Okay.
And he did. He made sure to tell me while I was there that he did it.
Not only did he do it, but I found out 2 days later that he didn't put any labor into that figure. Okay?
Yep.
He's got a wife and 2 kids. One of them is brand new baby. And they live in an apartment that's about half the size of my kitchen. And it's right around the corner from the church so that he can do what he does. So if you're thinking about sponsoring somebody, I can tell you stories about most of the volunteers at that church. Pochi lives in her sister's house, shares a room with a teenage boy, and has a little partition and a curtain in that room. So
And eats food out of her sister's refrigerator because she doesn't have money to buy her own food.
That's right. So that she can do what she does for these kids. The pastor of this church that averages around 300 people on a Sunday morning lives in his sister's and brother-in-law's house that they built in a development that kind of flashed and went bad, and the house was never quite finished. But he gets to live there very cheaply so that he can commute to the church so that he can do what they're doing in Addis. It's the kind of folks that are
These are the folks that you want as your friends.
it's nice to say sacrificial giving here in America. But these people are living it. And that's what draws me back to Ethiopia over and over again. She hasn't invited me either. But I don't think she'd keep me from going.
That newborn baby,
Yeah,
the mom could just drop it and walk away.
the mom was with it. The mom was taken to a mental institution. So there was a little bit more to the story there, but not a lot. That was yeah, that was not necessarily the norm, but there was obviously something wrong there, and the government decided that they would take care of that. The baby would go to the orphanage and the mom would go
Am I
elsewhere.
right again that kids cannot be abandoned legally in
You cannot abandon a child in Ethiopia anymore. They will hunt you down and put you in jail if you abandon a child now.
Which is why the sponsorship programs are gonna take on more.
Exactly. The sponsorship programs are going to become vital, and supporting the orphanages are going to become vital because, according to Pochi, there is only one region in the whole country that is still placing children for adoption, and she does not anticipate that that one will even stay open for much longer. So the kids that are in the orphanages now are looking at living there for the rest of their childhood. On the upside, not to depress everyone, because that was not my intention, there are Ethiopians who are stepping up and saying, now that Americans can't come and adopt these kids, we don't want them living in orphanages. We want them living with families. And they are stepping up and adopting these kids. That little Natty that I showed you with the big grin on his face all the time, there's an Ethiopian woman who wants to adopt him. Samin is adopting a boy at Holeta. Pochi's sister and brother-in-law are adopting a little girl that I met there when I was there last August and last November. They've had, I think, 3 other children adopted by Ethiopians. My friend Tess, who is one of the social workers that works for Covenant Development Association, he's 24 years old, and he is trying to scrape together enough money to get an apartment, because if he has an apartment, he will be eligible to adopt Yesu, who is almost 3 years old, who sees Tess coming, and his face lights up, and he starts yelling, "Daddy," and puts his hands up. I saw it. I didn't believe it when Pochi told me, and then I saw it with my own eyes when we got to the Shoney orphanage, and I was like, "Tess, you got to adopt him." And he's like, "I know, but I don't. I live in a bedroom that I rent from someone. I can't adopt a kid when I'm doing that." He's like, "I'll figure it out. So he's one of the volunteers. Tess is. Oh, it's not up there. Sorry, thought it was up there. Oh, it came unplugged. No wonder it's not up there. Okay. Nope. Oh well. Tess is one of the volunteers that is also available to be, would be sponsored if someone was interested. If he was sponsored for $75 a month, he could probably get a 2-room apartment, which would be enough, so that he could adopt Yesu. I had a picture of Yesu, but I think I deleted it. So, Lisa, you had a question.
Yeah, so that was part of you've answered a little bit of my question about the orphanages and basically how they were doing financially and otherwise, because I know that there was back along a desire to have more orphanages. So with the change in the government deciding that foreigners can't adopt children, then basically there will be no orphanages? I can't.
Ethiopia would like to convert to a foster care system rather than orphanages, but they are not prepared to do that right now. So I am not going to tell you the stories that Pochi told me, because they are sad and depressing, and that's not my goal. But there needs to be something else. So the child sponsorship is going to be one part of that, where you've got kids that would have gone to the orphanages that now somebody has to take care of them. They may not be in the orphanage, but they still need to eat and they still need to go to school, and so that's where the child sponsorship is going to come in. They are still running orphanages, because until the government says we're not doing orphanages anymore, they're going to continue, and they're going to fight for those kids, because Pochi doesn't know where they go. When the government says we're going to put this child in foster care, that's it. Pochi loses all contact with that child. One of the things that we did in Hosanna was to stop at the child welfare office so that Pochi could try and get information on 2 kids that they had taken from the Shoney orphanage to put in foster care. And all she was told was, "Oh, they're doing great." She's like, "What does that tell me?" She's like, I can't see them. I don't know that they're doing okay. So Pochi's a fighter. You've only met her a couple of times, but I bet you can even get that vibe from her. She is not going to let things go quietly. She's going to fight for those kids. So they're going to still run those 2 orphanages. They're going to add the child sponsorship, and their plan is every time they get a group of kids sponsored, they'll add another group of kids to be sponsored. So that's their plan right now. Yep, no, that's fine.
So right now, the church, like if we sponsored a child or a volunteer or a pastor or whatever,
Yep.
the Covenant Church would actually
Yes.
supposed to go.
Pochi would make sure of that, yep. Pochi runs that
Squeeze it
program.
till it squeals.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing with the child sponsorship. I found out we're not the only group that is trying to find sponsors for the kids. There's another organization here in the United States that is also looking for sponsors for the same kids. They take 20% right off the top for administrative fees. And I'm like, are you kidding me? They're charging you $7 to transfer the money. They don't do anything. Covenant does everything. And Pochi said it's the only way that we could get them to do it. So I'm like, well, send them my way because I'm not going to charge you 20% to transfer money. So, yes, I would, if someone sponsored a child, I would take that money and transfer it to Pochi every month, and then Pochi would take that money, and what she most likely will do is to take all the sponsored money that comes in and divide it evenly across the kids that are there, because she doesn't want to say, well, this kid's sponsored, so they get new clothes and a uniform and they get to go to school, but sorry, you're not sponsored yet. So what she'll do is, okay, $35 came in this month. Well, $35 is enough to buy everybody a uniform. So everybody gets a uniform and everybody gets to go to school. And then the next month money comes in and, well, there's enough money now to buy food for everybody. So everybody's going to take home a bottle of oil and a bag of Tef. And then the next month, something else. So she makes that, like my dad said, she will squeeze that money until there's, it's done all it can do. The goal is to have $35 per child, which will pay for everything every month. So kids won't have to wait months and months and months for something to happen. But until that happens, she makes it stretch big time.
In some of the areas where Covenant works, there are lots of grandmas and aunties that are raising children that they didn't think they were gonna have to do. And those kids are the ones that are at the most risk. They're not only at risk from hunger and poor clothing, they're at risk for trafficking.
Yep.
And
And child labor is a big one too.
yes. Some of the jobs that little children are made to do out in the countryside would drive you nuts around here. Using a hammer to break big rocks into little rocks to make gravel for fill on the highways and things like that. And, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna choke up.
I'm looking for, I have another one here. One of the things that they did, Covenant did not have was, I'm sorry, I've lost my document here. Oh well, I'll just go with this one. They did not have any way to give people information about specific children. So they're like, okay, we have this kid named Bethlehem, and so if anybody wants to sponsor her, and I'm like, well, people in the United States, they want to have a document with, like, a picture and a little blurb about them and stuff like that. So one of the things that Little As Much Ministries is going to do is to put together those child profiles. So this is one that we started. It's certainly not anywhere close to done yet, but this is a child that I actually met while I was in Ethiopia. This is Bethlehem. Everybody calls her Betty, just like my Bethlehem. And she's a 6th grader at the Heletta School, and she can show a great deal of emotion when she is expressing herself. She was late for school one day when we were there and broke down and cried because she was late for school, and she was so sorry she was late for school and stuff like that. She's a sweet girl, and she does not currently have a sponsor. There's another little girl, and I was looking for the other one. She was one that stole my heart while I was there. She's 5 years old. She saw me, and she was suddenly my new best friend. She held my hand the entire day. She was so cute. So I have a sheet on her too, and we're going to be working on those sheets. So that's another thing that our organization is going to do. So any other questions? Okay, I wanted to just very briefly mention we are going to be looking into getting our 501c3 status so that we can be more legit in our organization. One of the things we have to do in order to incorporate is to have a board of directors. So I'd like to introduce one of our board, Miss Tiffany Sanborn. And he's not here tonight, but I'm going to pick on him anyway. Another member of our board, Craig Blackwell. He agreed yesterday to be on our board, and we've asked someone else that we know, who I know will be passionate about the ministry, to be on the board. So I just wanted to mention that. We thank Tiffany and Craig and this other person very much for considering being on the board and working with us on this. So.
One question I asked Jenny this afternoon was, can I be on the board even though I haven't gone yet? Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully February of next year will be my first trip home.
Yes.
To the US.
Can't wait.
Yeah, me either.
Anybody else? Any questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for the time, and thank you for the prayers while I was gone. And I will keep everyone updated as things move along. If you're interested in helping with any of this, see me at any point today, next week, next month, whatever. However you feel led to help with that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And that's what we all need to do is to ask the Lord what part He would have us to do in this. Major needs, but the Lord is a major, blesses us in a major way. So maybe just a couple folks could close in prayer and commit.